Hello and welcome to this special broadcast from WION. My name is Mohammed Saleh. Now, the United States is crushing 50% tariffs on some Indian goods have kicked in. Now, these tariffs happen to be the highest in Asia, as the American President Donald Trump is pressing ahead with the levies to punish New Delhi for purchasing Russian oil, as he puts it. The new tariffs will double the existing 25% duty on the Indian exports that took effect on the 7th of August. Now, after years of nurturing closer economic and security links, India and the United States now find themselves at odds over Trump's trade war. The sky-high rate leaves India facing a likely slump in trade with its largest export market. And to tell us the impact of these 50% tariffs, and also as to how India can tide over this potential crisis, we're joined on this broadcast by Ms. Mitali Nikore, who's an economist and the founder of Nikore Associates. Ms. Nikore, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Let me start off by asking you this. Now, 50% tariffs is what has been imposed by the United States. In your assessment, what is the likely impact of these tariffs in the immediate term and also in the long term?
So I think, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show today. I think it's a very somber day for the medium, small and micro enterprises across India, because these tariffs are most likely to impact the small business owners across India absolutely in a way that they may not even expect, because there are sectors which are impacted by these tariffs like textiles, leather, gems and jewelry, and all of these sectors are dominated by MSMEs. And a lot of times MSMEs have already been facing a difficult business environment. They've been facing, higher costs. They've been facing issues with working capital constraints. And in this scenario and environment, when you add the uncertainty of the global trade plus a 50% tariff, that literally creates a situation where they cannot really bear the costs of trade, and they have to look at the domestic market.
Interesting. Now, the Indian Prime Minister has been making a very strong concerted push where he's again, time and again has repeated that India must be vocal for local. In your assessment, how much, of this impact can actually be absorbed by the local domestic market in India?
So let's take a case of, for example, the textile sector, because the textile sector is one that, I expect will be amongst the most, hardest hit sectors. And there India exports about $10 billion of textile goods to the US. Now, for this $10 billion of sales to be absorbed in the domestic market, it is possible. It is definitely possible, but it will probably take a longer time for that 10 billion to happen. So say it may not happen in just 1 year's time. It might be spread across a year and a half. What would be more amenable to sort of protecting the sector is, of course, finding newer markets. And when we look at the recent foreign trade agreement that's happened between India and the UK, now the UK has started presenting itself as a new market, a market where a lot of these goods which were initially or earlier going to the US could be redirected. But the basic bottom line is clear. Earlier, we were looking at growth. We were looking at in the amount that any sector is doing. If you sign a new foreign trade agreement with a new country, you're looking at growth. Now we're looking at survival. We're looking at saying, we used to do X, it'll go down, but now let's see how much we can do with these, new strategies of diversification and looking at the domestic market. So I do think that there will be some impact in the medium term on the growth prospects in India.
Right. Now, while businesses in India which were exporting goods to the United States are going to be impacted, the American consumers are also the ones who will face some amount of an impact, because they will face, and they are the ones who will have to pay these higher tariffs if they want to purchase goods that are made in India. In your assessment, to what extent is this tariff imposition by the United States president likely to impact the consumers in the United States?
So initially, in my assessment, in the first, 1 or 2 quarters, I was coming to the conclusion that definitely prices would rise in the US. But at the end of the day, this impacts both the supplier side and the consumer side. But the supplier side is being badly impacted, much worse. The impact is being felt here because at the end of the day, a lot of the sourcing agents that I've been speaking to, especially say for example in the textile sector, who make bulk purchases for international brands like H&M or Zara or any of the others, they are saying that a lot of the tariff impact is being passed on to suppliers in emerging markets as opposed to the final consumers. So at the end of the day, definitely some impact on US consumers, but a lot of it is being passed on to the suppliers and is being squeezed out of the margins of the suppliers.
Now, the American president, in his explanation as to why these punitive tariffs have been imposed on India, it's being said that it is because India purchases crude oil from Russia. But the fact is, China purchases more crude oil from Russia. And the United States of America has not completely broken off its trade relations. It actually trades with the Russians and purchases a lot of these nuclear fissile material from Russia. With that being the case, do you think this is an attempt by the United States of America in a way to try and address certain geopolitical realities by using tariffs, or is there something else that's actually driving these Donald Trump tariffs?
I think all of us have been trying to decode what has actually led Donald Trump to impose these Trump tariffs. Even in April, when we were looking at the tariff rates, everybody was flummoxed by the formula that was initially used to come up, with the tariff numbers, and even now, what sort of deals are being struck with different countries. I don't see much of an economic basis. I mean, as an economist, I can't see the basis at all for having tariffs. But of course, it's a political tool. It's a tool for arm twisting certain countries into saying, please give up buying oil from a certain country, or you should. Essentially, it's a way of saying do what I ask you to do. And at the end of the day, any sovereign country, will resist that. So, of course, Prime Minister Modi has spoken about vocal for local. He's also spoken about the fact that, we need to make in India for the world. And I think with these strategies and with the GST reforms that are being planned, India does have a very strong, response to the tariff. In fact, a lot of international media are also hailing the response of the government of India, saying, one country which is actually not bowed down to, the diktats in a sense of, of a Western power. So I think it, of course, will have an impact on our growth. It will have an impact on the trajectory. But at the same time, very critical for India to safeguard its growth and development journey in a way that is required for the poorest of poor in the country.
I think you've summed it up really well there. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Mitali Nikore, for joining us with that perspective there.